You eat apples your whole life. You know their taste, their crunch, their freshness. But have you ever seen an apple beyond what your eyes can see? An apple is one of the most familiar fruits in the world. People eat it every day, fresh, sliced, baked, or added to meals. It is often associated with simplicity, health, and everyday life. We instantly recognize an apple by its shape, its smooth skin, and its crisp texture. When we bite into an apple, we feel firmness and hear that characteristic crunch. But while apples are part of daily life, we rarely stop to think about what creates this texture. Why does an apple feel crisp rather than soft? Why is it juicy yet firm at the same time? The answers to these questions are hidden deep inside the structure of the fruit. In this video, I take an ordinary apple, the same kind people eat every day, and examine it under a microscope. I begin by showing the apple as we normally see it, before preparing a very small sample. The sample is tiny, almost invisible to the naked eye, yet it contains the full internal structure of the apple. Once placed on a microscope slide and prepared for observation, this small fragment becomes a window into a hidden world, inside something completely familiar. What feels crisp and simple in everyday life may reveal unexpected complexity when viewed up close. At 80 times magnification, the apple sample appears as a soft, uneven layer spread across the slide. The structure looks light and translucent, with gentle transitions between denser and lighter areas. The surface does not appear smooth. Instead, it shows subtle waves and irregular edges formed as the sample was pressed and prepared. Large, clear regions are visible, separated by thin boundaries. These areas hint at the high water content that gives apples their refreshing, juicy character. Small, rounded shapes appear scattered throughout the field of view. They vary in size and seem loosely embedded in the surrounding material. The structure feels open rather than compact. There is a sense of space between internal elements. Thin lines run through the sample, forming a loose network. These lines follow natural curves rather than straight paths. At this level, the apple already looks very different from how we imagine it. It no longer feels crisp or solid. Instead, it appears soft, hydrated, and flexible. This first magnification gives a general impression of the apple as a fruit built largely around water and delicate structure. At 200 times magnification, the internal organization of the apple becomes clearer. The sample reveals a more defined arrangement of its internal components. Rounded and oval formations become more noticeable. They appear suspended within a translucent background. Some of these formations cluster together while others remain isolated. This uneven distribution creates a layered visual texture. The background looks finely granular, filled with countless tiny particles. These particles give the structure depth and complexity. Thin, fibrous lines cross the field of view, intersecting at various angles. They form a loose internal framework. The apple's structure begins to feel engineered rather than random. Different regions appear to serve different roles. Moisture seems present everywhere. Even the denser areas retain a soft, hydrated appearance. At this scale, the apple no longer looks like a simple piece of fruit. It begins to resemble a carefully balanced system. This level helps explain why apples are juicy but still able to hold their shape. At 800 times magnification, the apple transforms into a detailed microscopic landscape. The field of view fills with clearly defined shapes and textures. Fibrous structures dominate the image. They crisscross and overlap, forming a dense internal network. These fibers vary in thickness and direction. Some appear stretched, while others curve gently through the sample. Between the fibers, small rounded bodies are visible. They appear trapped within the network, adding depth to the structure. The contrast between solid-looking fibers and softer surrounding regions becomes very strong. This contrast defines much of the apple's internal architecture. The structure no longer feels uniform. It looks layered and interconnected. At this scale, the apple starts to resemble a microscopic scaffold. Each component appears to support the next. The complexity visible here explains the apple's crisp sensation when bitten. The fibers contribute to resistance, while moisture adds freshness. This magnification reveals how structure and water work together inside the fruit. At 2,000 times magnification, the apple becomes almost unrecognizable as food. The image is filled with fine detail that completely replaces the familiar idea of an apple. Individual fibers are now clearly visible. They appear thin, elongated, and tightly packed together. The spaces between them are filled with tiny particles and irregular shapes. These elements create a textured and dynamic environment. Some regions look highly organized, while others appear more chaotic. This variation adds visual complexity and depth. Rounded formations sit along the edges of fibrous structures. They follow the contours, forming subtle repeating patterns. At this level, the apple no longer feels simple or natural. It looks like a carefully constructed microscopic system. This hidden world exists inside something people eat every day, yet it remains completely unseen in normal life. Looking this closely changes how familiar things feel. It invites curiosity about what lies beneath the surface. If exploring these hidden structures feels interesting, there are many more everyday objects waiting to be seen this way, right here